The Chao Garden holds a unique place in the Sonic franchise. It's a low-stakes virtual pet system with a surprising amount of depth, built into two games that otherwise focus on high-speed platforming. It makes for an interesting pitch. After fighting apocalyptic water beasts and boarding down San Francisco on part of a broken helicopter, there's nothing quite like feeding miniature unicorns to a bipedal alien thing. The Chao Garden is fondly remembered by fans of the series, and rightly so. This default garden in Sonic Adventure 2 might be my favorite location in all of gaming. The waterfalls, the distant clouds, the palm trees, it offers a unique feeling that complements the rest of the game, not just as a break between levels, but as a world unto itself. There's arguably no shortage of virtual pet simulators, but the Chao Garden is unique in the way it interacts with the rest of Sonic Adventure. So it's notable that for all the ways Sonic Adventure 2 gets it right, the Chao system in Adventure 1 was built from a very different set of often contradictory goals. It's an informal tutorial for the game's action stages, a way of cashing in on collectible trinkets, an evolution of the surprisingly complicated breeding system from Nights into Dreams, and, perhaps the biggest difference between these two games, an essential part of Adventure's world building. The Chao were, apparently, an ancient race who used the Chaos Emeralds as a power source, and the game's big monster thing is actually a Chao who mutated from all the power or something like that. And now they're here, being patted on the head by Eggman. It goes without saying that the Sonic games have fairly complicated lore, and nowhere is that more apparent than in the function of these relaxing diversions from the rest of Sonic Adventure. In this video, we're looking at the very first Chao Garden, in the Station Square Adventure Field. This is a deeply weird area, dare I say creepy, because of all the disparate things the Chao system is meant to do. This initial area, more than any other part of the game, went through a number of changes between the different releases of Sonic Adventure 1, and the resulting space contains all these strange artifacts from over a decade of game development. Starting with its first release in 1998, to the more advanced mechanics of its direct sequel, to the updates from that sequel being added back into the first game for its GameCube release, to all the other changes made for the various PC ports over the course of its director's cut run. This is a fascinating place. So this week, we're investigating the Station Square Garden to try and answer the question that has haunted me for over 20 years. Why is the first Chao Garden so creepy? Let's dive right in. Also, quick overview of the Sonic Adventure releases for those who don't know. Sonic Adventure is considered the first mainline 3D Sonic game, although there's an earlier entry called Sonic 3D Blast, which is confusingly an isometric platformer and not actually 3D. There's also Sonic R, which is a racing game with polygonal 3D graphics. But either way, Sonic Adventure is a 3D platformer released in 1998 for the Sega Dreamcast, with its sequel coming out a few years later in 2001. However, the Dreamcast was discontinued in January 2001 due to low sales, or at least this was announced in January, with the last console manufactured in March. And since the sequel to Sonic Adventure was still in development when Sega announced this cancellation, a GameCube port of Sonic Adventure 2 followed very soon after, with some added multiplayer content. Later on, in 2003, a deluxe port of Sonic Adventure 1 was released for the GameCube with some quality of life improvements and a bunch of arbitrary changes to make the game feel a bit more like its sequel. Notably, Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut comes out almost 5 years after the original game, so most of the reviews were fairly critical of its graphics, camera, and overall technical issues. 5 years is a long time in gaming, but even more so in the early days of 3D. But, if you ask me, this game is perfect. I love Sonic Adventure 1, except for its Chao Garden, which is what this video is all about. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to Computer Lab Hijinks, a show about games, old software, and web ephemera. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Will.
And today we are talking about Chao Gardens, and the whole point we're getting at in this video is that the first Chao Garden, the first one, is creepy. And that's really all I have to say. This will not be a short video, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But everything I'm about to say can be extrapolated from just the creepiness of the Station Square Chao Garden in a variety of forms. So the Chao are these small bluish alien things, and they appear in these very sandboxed gardens in both Sonic Adventure games in all of their releases. And it's a virtual pet simulator inside a linear adventure platformer game. And it's important that it's part of a larger game because the stuff that you unlock in the levels of both Sonic Adventure games can be used to upgrade your Chao. You can feed animals to your Chao, and it's less scary than it sounds, believe it or not. In Sonic Adventure 2, there's the Chao rods, which are these computer sticks, these glowing neon rods that you feed to the Chao to upgrade their stats. And we'll come back to the stats because that changes between the versions. But essentially, the Chao Garden and the overall A-Life system in its original form, this comes about at a time when virtual pets are still beginning. So the A-Life system begins in Nights into Dreams, which is a Saturn game, and that comes out in 96, which is the same year that Tamagotchi started. So this all coincides in a kind of weird way. And as virtual pets become a fad in the popular culture, become more popular and profitable, you see the Sonic series changing what it does with the Chao Gardens. The mechanics of virtual pets go from something of a novelty to an actual industry unto themselves. So by the final original release of Sonic Adventure 2, before we get into re-releases and stuff, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, they have added a lot of stuff into the Chao Garden system that was not there in the original, certainly in the original Sonic Adventure game, which is fairly bare bones, and especially not in Nights into Dreams, where the Mepians, the A-Life system, they don't really do anything. But we will come back to the Mepians and Nightopians in a bit, because that's a significant tangent unto itself. But first, Will, what is your Sonic Adventure experience?
Honestly, I have not had a lot of familiarity with the Sonic growing up in general. Like a few times I had dabbled in like some of the Genesis games. Like I think not quite being the most fond of the gameplay because it was always like kind of stop start formula. It's like, oh, you're accelerating as fast as possible. And there's like this visceral sense of inertia that's like really satisfying. And then it'll just like stop you against some spikes. And it's like, all right, now you have to go to platforming suddenly. I always found it like very jarring. Yeah, I mostly didn't grow up with like a Dreamcast or prior Sega consoles. So when Sonic became more like multi-platform and Sonic Heroes came out for the PlayStation 2, like I wanted to get on that, like see what Sonic was about. And so I played a good deal of Sonic Heroes, but yes, Sonic Adventure. I was playing Sonic Adventure 1 on Steam briefly. I think I beat like 1 or 2 levels. I fought like Knuckles, I think, in some kind of grassy plain. And
legendary boss fight. Legendary. Only the most skilled can defeat Knuckles.
So much skill required. I always heard Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, I guess, in some circles is seen as like one of the all-time great games.
All time.
So I'm like, I'm curious, but I feel like I should probably earn my cred and power through Adventure 1 at some point as well.
You got to play the adventure games. I would always recommend starting with 2. I think 2 is a much more, the merits of that game are a lot more obvious.
Oh, okay.
But here's the thing. I will not hear a bad word about either Sonic Adventure games. They are, emotionally speaking, spiritually speaking, they're perfect games.
Wow.
There's nothing wrong with those games. From a technical standpoint, wow, those are very quirky games. They have some rough edges. Things don't always work perfectly, but they are just so much fun. And yeah, definitely start with 2.
Okay.
So Sonic Adventure 1 is a much weirder game than its sequel. It was trying a lot of different things. It famously has this kind of hub environment that connects all the levels, similar to Mario 64. And the one thing I always disliked about the first Sonic Adventure relative to Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Adventure 1's Chao Gardens were just bizarre. I was not a fan of any of them, but especially the default one, Station Square, and that's what this video is going to be about. The gardens in Sonic Adventure 1, which are just these haunted dentist offices, basement of a mall, abandoned locations, and there is just something deeply disturbing about how it's designed. And for lack of any real information on why the first Chao Garden looks the way it does, we're going to pull from the different releases because it has the most substantial differences between releases of Sonic Adventure 1. And this video is all about not just what those differences are, but what the different design choices do. Just viscerally, what happens to my skin when I play the Sonic Adventure Station Square Chao Garden. So we're going to jump right into that. And we have this really tremendous setup here. So we have the Dreamcast original, and I have my Wii to play the GameCube releases because my GameCube doesn't read discs anymore. So we got, it's kind of a nightmare of a setup, I must say. I'm going to close my lid a little bit here. So we got The Dreamcast is going into a RCA to HDMI converter that's going into a splitter, one of which is going into my capture card and the other is going into the screen so we can see what we're doing.
Goodness.
It is an absolute nightmare. And then, of course, the Wii sensor bar has to be plugged in because you can't launch a GameCube game without the Wii remote. Anyway, that's not relevant information to what we're talking about, but I think people need to hear it anyway.
We're coming full circle on the AVGN rig. It's like, oh, we got our own nightmare rig now.
Oh, this is very like tripods on the ceiling level of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
This is the nightmare rig. So the first thing to really talk about is the weird origins of the Chao system, because I was reading a GameFAQs guide on Chao in preparation for this video, and I saw someone referred to the Chao Garden as the A-Life system. I didn't quite understand what that was. And so we did a medium dive on what was the A-Life system. And so, Will, you are somewhat familiar with the Nights series, specifically the Wii version, which is Nights Journey into Dreams. Journey into Dreams.
Yes.
Okay. What are your thoughts on that game?
I initially picked it up because I thought that aesthetic, that vibe of Nights into Dreams and Nights Journey into Dreams is like very much felt like my thing. You're just kind of navigating this wide open, like fantastical world. I don't think it's necessarily a platformer. It's been years since I've played it, but there's very like bubbly, imaginative, like it's a mix of like evil creatures that kind of corrupt these worlds, but there's this kind of like ambient, very kind of ethereal feel about everything that I thought was just like so cool. And then getting to play as like knights themselves and like switching into that kind of avatar, doing all the like loop-de-loops and dashing all around. It was this whimsical, like freeing experience. I enjoyed what I was playing of that and I dug it. So
it's a good one.
Yeah.
So Nights into Dreams had this virtual pet system, or an approximation of a virtual pet system, called the Mepians or Nightopians. And it's kind of a contradictory thing. In some ways, it's really bare bones. They don't do much. They don't have stats in obvious ways, but you can breed the Nightopians in this really complicated, convoluted system that is really a product of its time by somehow being very technologically advanced and also not something that appears to have a lot of layers, if that makes sense. So I'm going to read this sentence from my notes because it is astoundingly confusing. The A-Life system refers to the Nightopians, these fairy creatures hidden in the game's levels for Nights into Dreams on the Saturn that display emotions and respond to player activity. They get mad if you speed past them, for instance. They can also lay eggs, which leads into the game's surprisingly complicated system, wherein the player can genetically engineer certain creatures by breeding Nightopians with the game's enemies to create Mepians. And this breeding system is way more complicated than you think. So there's a lot going on with how to document which Mepians lead to which Nightopians or vice versa. Anyway, I'm not an expert on Nights into Dreams, but what matters for Sonic Adventure is that the creatures in the A-Life system, the virtual pets in Nights into Dreams, they stay in the level where you find them. So there's not a separate garden where you interact with the A-Life system. It's just the game's main levels, and you can find them hanging out by a waterfall or in a pond or something. And that is annoying because the game's levels have time limits. There is a giant nightmare clock, literal nightmare clock, that chases you down after a certain amount of time and like kicks you out of the level by killing you. So it's you can start to see how this is different from the virtual pet systems that we expect today, where it's a low stakes experience where you're relaxing by playing the Chao Garden. Nights into Dreams, a very stressful game if you want to interact with the Nightopians because you're just constantly watching the timer tick down. It has a substantial amount of interactivity, but you have to somehow do it within these short bursts of time, and they cannot go between levels. Anyway, it's a whole convoluted system, but you can see where the idea is quite different from where it ends up with Sonic Adventure, but still sort of heading in that direction. So the reason that we know this definitely influenced the Chao Gardens is this quote by Takashi Iizuka, director of Sonic Adventure, but not director of the director's cut, which is a whole thing. Terrible name for a re-release. Quote, "As for the Chao, the people who played Nights probably already know this, but for that game we had developed what we call A-Life, or an artificial life form that lives within the world of the game. We wanted something that felt alive and would grow with the character. The concept of A-Life was so well taken in Nights that we added it to Sonic Adventure." So we're going to start talking about how this leads into Sonic Adventure. And I think while we do this, or while I talk about it, we can just fire up the Dreamcast and start playing I hesitate to use the word original, but an early version of Sonic Adventure. So this is how should I put this? Okay, let me just hold all the boxes for a second. Because this setup is complicated. So I have my copies of both Sonic Adventure GameCube games here. And these are, of course, re-releases of the Dreamcast originals. And the version of Sonic Adventure that we're going to play is the limited edition, which was a Blockbuster exclusive in Canada and Hollywood Video exclusive in the States release that predates the Dreamcast in America by 2 months or so. So it has more updates than the original Japanese release. Very small tweaks that were made for the release version, if that makes any sense. So it's basically the release version, but not quite. So anyway, we're going to start with the Dreamcast. So, one of the weird things with Sonic Adventure 1's Chao Garden in the original release is that it's doing some kind of contradictory things. Part of the initial goal, in addition to building upon the A-Life system, part of the goal for Takashi Iizuka for putting this in Sonic Adventure 1 was that this was the Sonic series going 3D for the first time. Not really, but this was their biggest attempt yet to go 3D with Sonic. And so they were worried, at least the director was worried, that players might not know how to navigate a 3D space, especially at high speeds. So the Chao Garden ostensibly was an attempt to provide a tutorial in a game that does not have a tutorial. We'll talk about why that's weird in a second, but here's a quote from Takashi Iizuka. The Chao Garden, it allowed people who weren't necessarily good at action games to be able to play a Sonic game for the first time. As people spent more and more time with the Chao portions of the game, little did they know that they were actually becoming good at the rest of the game and were soon able to actually play through the action portions as well. So we have this quote about how the Chao Garden is going to teach you how to play Sonic, which sounds like a pretty noble goal. I think there's nothing wrong with that. However, I would like to point out, Sonic Adventure starts with a boss fight with the Chaos monster. It's not a hard boss fight at all. But there is a certain amount of skill involved in navigating a 3D space, especially while the camera starts moving around in kind of funny ways. Also, maybe I'll save this point for after, but I'll come back to my other complaints. Whoa! The bullets fall out.
Ineffective. Our weapons are useless.
Chaos 0, because he doesn't have any Chaos Emeralds yet.
Oh, whoa, okay.
All right.
Oh, all right.
He did 1 damage at him.
Oh.
Well, there we go.
Goodness.
Okay. 2 out of 3 damage points.
Yeah, because I wasn't sure, because usually Sonic has like a home. Oh, did I? Oh, okay, that perspective. I thought I glitched through the level for a second.
The floor disappears when the camera moves.
Okay.
It's very jarring.
Yes.
Here we go.
All right.
Look at that. First try.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Will, would you say that was extraordinarily hard?
Oh man, I was on the edge of my seat. My first assumption when playing this game is, to jump and try the jump again and to see if I do a homing attack. And wouldn't you know it works.
So not a hard boss fight. Some people have had difficulty with it, but it is throwing a lot of mechanics at you very quickly. And this happens before you can explore the game world. So in terms of the Chao Garden being a tutorial, it's kind of weird that you can't access it right away. You have to win a boss fight first. But we're going to get into my second problem with the Chao Garden as a tutorial once this cutscene ends here. Sonic views a plane crash.
Watch out! You're gonna crash! Ah!
Seamless transition into gameplay. Okay, so the camera's pointed in that direction. You would have no reason to suspect that there's other places you can go at this point. You just go straight into the Emerald Coast and you start playing Sonic Adventure.
Am I led to believe that I could have avoided going to Emerald Coast?
You could have, believe it or not.
Wow.
If you want to, with the start menu, quit out of the level. Delicious loading times. And if we head in the other direction.
Okay. Ooh.
So if you go through these foldy doors here.
Ooh, whoa. Oh, all right. There's, okay.
And then this first elevator on the left. And then you go. And now you're in the Chao Garden. Now, that's not super obvious.
I would not expect to go to a garden after just popping in an elevator, literally to another dimension.
Yeah. So there's a boss fight, first of all. Then you're in this pool area, and there's a level that is obvious that you should play next. And it's not immediately clear that if you turn around, go into this office park building, and get into the first elevator on the left, that you'll head into this virtual pet simulator. So I know I'm really drilling this point home. This does not make sense as a tutorial. Anyway, so there's Some things I guess we could look at. I believe the shoulder buttons rotate the camera.
Okay, yes.
So let's get a nice view of these walls. So the point of this video, first Chao Garden is creepy, and this is Sonic Adventure 1's Chao Garden on the Dreamcast in its original release, in its pre-public American release. The walls are just blank. It's this beige kind of faux marble room. There's these faux marble floors, beige walls with a couple stripes, these corner fountains. For me, it feels like you're in a doctor's office lobby. It's really not a relaxing space. Personally, this just makes my skin crawl. This is an extra anxiety space for me. I don't know how you feel about this spot.
I was going to say the kind of Greek question mark columns and everything.
Yeah, the columns, yeah.
And like some of the like tile work and this pool and everything. It feels like a hotel pool or something. And it's just like kind of a weird vibe, but yeah, all of the walls and like no windows for like lighting and seeing outside is like very alienating. And I guess as far as, continuity with like the logic of this world, or unless unless that's like a ceiling texture, like painting.
There's supposed to be a window in the ceiling, but it looks kind of flat, but that's sort of a product of the time. But yes, you've pointed out there's no windows.
Yes.
So you're in this very enclosed square room, very rigid geometric shapes, no windows. It's very claustrophobic, can I just say. What else are you getting from here? So blank walls, no windows.
Yeah, so the continuity of literally popping into an elevator and just winding up in this like very enclosed space. Yeah, it's kind of like, maybe not like a liminal space, but kind of like an uncanny, like weird, like if this was a hotel pool, it would not be a good one, I would say.
One that you don't want to swim in.
Yeah, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
Kinda. It's not inspiring in any capacity, I'll say that.
Yeah. So a few things to note before we move on to the next version of Sonic Adventure. So you have the Chao transporter in the corner.
Okay.
Let's hatch a Chao first. So if you want to grab one of the eggs.
Egg.
Let's see. Let's get a nice camera move on this. Oh yeah, that is a different animation than we see later. And there he is. There's the Chao, all bluish, yellowish. What is that color? Anyway, bluish, bipedal.
Like a teal, kind of
a teal color. And if you want to feed them a coconut from one of the trees, just need the one. Oh, the other one hatched already.
Oh,
there we go. Exclamation mark. The Chao is eating the coconut or whatever fruit that was. Obviously no stats, no real upgradable elements, at least on screen visually in the UI.
Okay.
So the Chao kind of just hang out. They have basic emotions and not a whole lot else. And notably, the Station Square Chao Garden has to match the aesthetics of Station Square. So it looks like you're in a business park because you are. It has to connect with the rest of the game because Sonic Adventure is this interconnected world. So everything has to connect in a fairly obvious way. And that kind of lends itself to this really ugly aesthetic of just this doctor's office waiting room. You said hotel pool. I think that's accurate. I don't find anything relaxing about a hotel pool. It's this very chlorine smelling, indoor space, very claustrophobic. Anyway, which brings us to the Chao transporter. So this is kind of for all the complaints I have about the original Chao Garden, the Chao transporter is a pretty revolutionary feature. If we step up to that, you can move your Chao virtual pets onto the memory card. And of course, the Dreamcast memory card, the VMU, has a battery and a screen and buttons. It basically is a Tamagotchi, and it performs that function if you move your Chao over to it. All right, hello everyone. It's Nathan from the future, and I'm here with an important update, which is that as of our initial recording, I had never actually played Chao Adventure. So this is the place that you bring your Chao from the console to play mini games with them and collect rings off console. So while I had played the Game Boy Advance version of that, I'd never actually played the VMU Dreamcast version, Chao Adventure. And the reason for that was because my VMU, in the 15-year period that I have owned it, has never had a new battery in it. And I never thought that that was important to replace because why would I need to use the VMU for anything other than memory? But now there's a reason, because we're talking about the tiny Chao Garden. So let's take this out of here. That was harder than I thought it would be. So there is a D-pad, sleep and mode, A and B. It's kind of a little Game Boy console unto itself. A little more advanced than a Tamagotchi, now that I think about it. But we will see what this thing does. And I have here some batteries. Let's get in there. It's got one of those tiny Phillips head screws. So there's actually 2 that go in. And wow, that is remarkably clean in there. I don't see any marks of corrosion or anything like that, so that's nice to see. And then we'll crack open these. If all goes well, this will power on the VMU. Maybe it'll make a beeping sound. I'm excited for that. Oh, that's a good sound. Okay. Huh. And there's a little menu. Okay, so I have to put a Chao on this and report back on what it's like. Because again, I know a lot about the tiny Chao Garden. I have fond memories of that, but I've never played Chao Adventure. So I'm going to pause for a bit to move a Chao over from the Dreamcast, and we will see what that does. Okay, so here's what happened. Use the sleep button to turn it on, and then navigate with the mode button over to this game icon, and it seems like you can only have one game on it at a time, and in this case that is Chao Adventures. So you can see them walking, and that's about it. I've found sometimes they'll just ask to go to a different place, like, hey, let's go to the desert. So if I press A, there's this menu here, and I love how the option to breed the Chao says mating. It's kind of ominous. There's also a battle mode where you can presumably connect 2 VMUs through these holes in the top. And then there is game, which is actually just one game, and it's a tile matching game, which I find quite difficult. I'm trying to memorize those real quick. And if you get them all right, not just some of them right, but if you get them all correct, then you get a little prize that you can use to feed your Chao. So let me give this a shot. Oh, I mixed up the 2 candies. All right, let's give this another shot. Just says sorry. The game's apologizing to me for my own lack of skill. Okay, we'll try that once more. Oh, here we go. Going for the record. Yeah. Okay, what do I get? Cherry. So I get a cherry for the Chao. Okay, and we're back at the main area. So if I go into the items, cherry, they eat it. Power +4. And so there is actually stats in this. So here's the thing I did not know about Chao Adventure, was that Sonic Adventure 1's Chao Garden, they do actually have stats, it's just not showing them to you. So here, on the VMU, you can go to status. There's Nate. I named them Nate. Happy, HP 12 out of 12. I'm assuming that relates to battles. Swim, fly, run, and power. These are all the stats of the Chao. And that's it. Those are all their stats. Main point of this, I don't understand all the features yet, but you can move your Chao from the Dreamcast onto the VMU for Chao Adventure. And I must say, my favorite part of Chao Adventure, relative to a Tamagotchi, here's my hot take for the episode, is that if you see here, there's the sleep button on the VMU. You can press the sleep button, and you can just relax and come back later. And that is the thing. I find Tamagotchis and Digimon both very stressful. They're just constantly barking at you, and if you disappear for more than a couple hours at a time, they just die and make you feel bad. But the Chao on the VMU, and I don't think they get hungry and pass away. I think they just are waiting for you to play tile matching games. And look at that fun animation of them walking through the desert environment. That is what it looks like when you move a Chao to the VMU. I finally know, and now so do you. And now back to our investigation of the Station Square Chao Garden. And what's kind of cool about this is that because the Chao can be moved from the game to the memory card, the Chao can be moved between games. Mm-hmm. So you can take your creatures between Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, and there is a special Chao that you can only get in Phantasy Star Online. Especially, there's one on the GameCube that's quite rare, and you have to play through Phantasy Star Online, unlock the Chao, move it to the memory card, and then move it into the other game. Anyway, all of which to say, there's a lot of cool stuff happening with the Chao transporter. But that is, I think, all of the close reading I have to do for the Dreamcast version before we move on to the GameCube release.
Ooh,
Will, do you have any
more?
Do you have any closing thoughts on this Dreamcast thing?
Nothing in particular, just that I want to get the hell out of here.
That's kind of the whole point, really, if you think about it. This is not a room that you want to be in. That's about it for Dreamcast Chao Garden, and we will power the console off and move to the GameCube. So right now we're loading up Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut. Although confusingly, the director in question is a different director than the original one for the game. But anyway, someone's director's cut of Sonic Adventure 1, and this is the first time the game was re-released on a different console. So we're going to look at the Station Square Chao Garden again, but on the slightly different version.
Okay. Did they add the ability to skip cutscenes?
I think they did, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Some cool features in Director's Cut.
Basic QOL.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Good quality of life stuff. Not enough according to the critics, but in my opinion, this game is perfect and beyond critique. Except for the fact that Sonic's model I do not like in the Director's Cut. They redid him to match the sequel, I believe. They updated the model in addition to other stuff. Like you'll notice the building is white instead of sort of red brick. So they updated his model to match the sequel. However, the sequel just had different lighting and a different visual design. And so Sonic's model in this director's cut, kind of the lighting is messed up across the board in this release, but Sonic looks out of place almost all of the time because of the way that his character model is just too shiny. It interacts with the lighting in weird ways. And you're just blasting through this. I'm impressed.
Indeed.
All right, so let's go to the Station Square DX Director's Cut Chao Garden.
Okay, the interior's like,
a little bit brighter.
Yeah, the colors are more vibrant and varied, so that's something.
Okay, and here we go.
They added a window, a very clear ceiling.
Yes. So a lot of stuff has been changed. Most notably, the two corner fountains have been replaced by one main fountain, which is, as you pointed out, it's brighter and more vibrant. The ceiling is more obviously a window, and there's a nice perspective effect on the skybox. The skybox is a lot brighter and more prominent. So in general, this is a bit more visually pleasing on first glance than the original release of the Chao Garden. It's less creepy in some ways, but some of the changes continue to get weird in other ways.
Okay.
Okay, so we have this Chao,
Okay.
and you'll notice they look a little bit different. They're not the color. Will? You are a monster?
The controls are a little different from... Did I send
spin dash the Chao.
Did I kill him?
The distance. No, they don't die.
Okay.
But they will be upset with you. Look how sad they will.
Oh no, I'm sorry,
Will!
buddy.
Oh, they're crying.
Can
Will.
I pick him up?
I need to take a beat to recover emotionally
There we go.
from what Will did.
I'm trying to coddle him real quick.
Folks, I know they're not real, but that kind of makes them more real. Will, he's drowning.
Oh no.
Will?
Okay, now it's...
There's not going to be a show at the end of the day today. Okay, so if you pick up the Chao, there's some stats on the side of the screen here.
Yes.
Some statistics. So this is something they added in Sonic Adventure 2. And then when they re-released Adventure 1 on the GameCube, they sort of retrofit those additions into the game. And so this is partly why the GameCube version of Sonic Adventure, it looks nicer, but it kind of gives me the willies because it's updated, but there's also a bunch of stuff that's retrofitted in. And so the stats is part of that. I don't have strong opinions on the stats, but it is notable that they've added that in. But if we put them down, there's a few things that are kind of weird. The big fountain weirds me out because it feels like you're in a dead mall suddenly. You know, the walls have a bit more stuff. It's not as empty feeling of a room, but this big fountain does something to me. I feel like I'm in just the most empty mall, populated only by small bipedal aliens. But it is brighter, which is nice generally.
You know, honestly, I think I'm a lot more receptive to this one than you are because, like, you're getting that uncanny mall vibe. But honestly, the addition of like a big, wide open ceiling window, I think it brings the room together a lot. And definitely the colors being brighter and having this fountain, like, I don't equate it to like a mall space, or at least maybe it helps that I'm not trying to find an analog in this sense. So it's a more pleasant space for me. But for you, I think it sounds like you're extrapolating, like, how is this like the real world in ways that are unsettling or distending from that reality, kind of.
Yeah, I think my feelings about this are that it does two things at once. In general, I think the re-releases make this garden better. I think it's an absolute nightmare abomination in its original form. Cross-section of weird design choices that weren't fully realized yet. And so I think it gets better. However, as it gets better, I think it turns into a dead mall. And I'll talk a bit more about the mall aesthetics and why that's significant later. But if you pause for a moment and turn to one of the doors, there's a new door for what they call the black market, which is, it was in the second Sonic Adventure and they've sort of retrofitted it in. So part of the reason I think it feels like a mall is they've added a shop in addition to all the other kind of fountain things. And this is a space where you can buy sometimes Chao eggs, but also rare fruits. And that is more significant in the sequel. So in Sonic Adventure 2, there's morality, and the two other gardens are actually heaven and hell, essentially.
Yeah.
And because the game is divided into two story modes, whether the heroes or villains are interacting with the Chao is important. So anyway, there's some stuff you can buy. It's kind of boring, but I think there's an egg you can buy somewhere.
I have 8 rings. I can't buy anything.
And so this is kind of the cool thing with the Chao Garden and why a lot of people are calling for the Chao Garden to be brought back in a future Sonic game. The reason that's tricky, I generally agree, but the reason that's tricky is that the rest of the game also has to be quite good. And so the Sonic series kind of has its ups and downs. Right. But what's cool about the Chao Garden is that it's not its own game. As fast as the rest of the game gets and as chaotic as the story gets, this is a place you can return to and it's peaceful and you can cash in on some of your success from the main game. So one more thing to look at is the Chao Transporter is different in this version.
Yeah, I noticed the Game Boy Advance there.
Yeah, so it's a Game Boy Advance. And this is cool for a number of reasons. So it does a number of the same functions. This is where you can delete Chao and name them or rename them. So you can drop them off on the GBA. And this is cool because it functions with the GameCube Game Boy Advance link cable. I think it had some convoluted name.
Yeah.
But anyway, if there's no game in your Game Boy, you can send over a rudimentary Chao Garden. I think they call it the tiny Chao Garden.
Okay.
You can take care of your Chao and then play some mini games, get some coins, and then send it back to your GameCube, which was a pretty cool feature. I was always a fan of that. I had the GameCube link cable. It was really only useful for a small handful of games, but this was the one where it did the coolest stuff. And then if you have Sonic Advance, any of the Sonic Advance games, you can send your Chao from the GameCube to Sonic Advance, and then that way you can save it, or like literally save your game, so that it doesn't matter if your Game Boy shuts off. Anyway, so lots of cool stuff in Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut. But as we start to do these quality of life improvements and fixes, it starts to feel like a dead mall in a lot of ways. So if we exit this for a second, there's one thing that really is like, not the bane of my existence, but something that irks me more than it should. If you go to the right, near the Chao Transporter, there is a poster. So Chao Laboratory, and then there's a URL.
Oh, goodness.
A URL in a GameCube game. And if you go to this website, I think it's been fully removed from the internet at this point. But on the Wayback Machine, you can see that they have like coloring book pages. And so I have some footage of me just coloring one of those in. And it sends you to this like very late 90s website, a downloads page. There's things you can print. Anyway, I want you to remember this poster as we move into the third version of Sonic Adventure, because there is a third version. I told you all up front, this will not be a short video. But this thing kind of dates the game in a weird way, at least the GameCube version. There's something about URLs in video games that don't sit well with me. It also just feels like a banner ad. And again, this is where it feels like you're in a mall, because there's just ads for, Lysol or whatever, just on big posters. And so one of the things that's significant about this first Chao Garden is that every time they re-release it, they change some stuff, they improve some stuff, but they also just retrofit in a bunch of other weird things into what is genuinely an old game by the end. And when we get into like the Steam version of Sonic Adventure, this is going on a 15 or 20-year-old game, and they're just still adding new stuff into it, but in a way that matches the original art style. And it's very bizarre and inconsistent. So we will power off the GameCube/Wii for now, and we will move into the final stage of this Sonic Adventure Station Square Chao Garden saga. Throughout this video, I've used the phrase dead mall to describe the first Chao Garden, but it's worth defining what that really means. While the aesthetics of dead malls are fairly well established through vaporwave visualizers and throwback 80s nostalgia, there's a deeper significance to all the empty shops and deactivated marble fountains beyond just vibes. The mall was a place for people to congregate, particularly in the expansion of suburbs, where, to put it bluntly, nothing all that interesting happens. If you live in the city, you're in walking distance of art galleries and comedy clubs and fun restaurants. But in the suburbs, there's, Applebee's, a Dave & Buster's, the library that closes at 6 p.m., I'm oversimplifying quite a bit, but there's a real problem in suburban life, which is the lack of third places. Basically, things that aren't just work or home. And at least for a while, indoor malls were a possible answer to that question. Alexandra Lang writes, "In subsidizing the home and the road, the government failed to subsidize a place to gather. In post-war suburban America, the mall was the only structure designed to fill that need. The late 20th century United States doesn't make sense without the mall. It wasn't just about buying shoes and doing whatever Spencer's Gifts is supposed to be about, but rather a place to exist." Malls were an imperfect solution to a very real problem at the heart of American suburbs. So, what happens when they close? In lieu of generic B-roll, I have some footage of the mall from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1, and that's actually a useful starting place. A truly abandoned mall, like the one on screen, is a fairly extreme example of the dead mall phenomenon. All the stores have closed, the lights are off, and some troublemaking youths have broken in for illicit skateboarding. But the phrase dead mall syndrome also refers to a more subtle problem. Indoor shopping centers where 70% or more of the stores have closed, largely due to online shopping and big box stores. The mall itself is still operational, so to speak, but there's nothing there. The whole building has this eerie, pseudo-nostalgic quality as a place that used to provide some kind of function in the world, but no longer does. And that's what I mean by the whole dead mall aesthetic. The infrastructure of the mall was built with a very specific purpose in mind, but over time it slowly became scam-adjacent cell phone booths and Funko Pop stores, and eventually just a bunch of empty shops connected by a large hallway with ugly fluorescent lighting. So when I see the big fountain with no one sitting nearby, I can't help but think, oof, that's creepy. And if you'll follow me on this somewhat convoluted metaphor, just as malls are a place to hang out that isn't work or home, the Chao Garden is a place to play Sonic where you aren't quite playing Sonic. To whatever degree video games need a third place, this was it. So with that in mind, here's our last stop on the investigation of Station Square's Chao Garden, the modern-day Steam release. Okay, so this is the Sonic Adventure DX Steam version Chao Garden, which has some differences.
Okay.
So we have the singular fountain, of course.
Oh, beautiful camera
the
interaction.
camera's
Oh, even
fantastic.
Juicier. All right.
This is what makes the game perfect. The
Okay.
black market is still here.
Okay.
Again, mall vibes. There's a place to spend money. There's commerce in the Chao Garden. The skybox is there. Looking pretty nice, I must say. But here is the change that I dislike.
Okay.
And this is a very innocuous, insignificant change. But this advertisement is just changed to a shot of the Chao Academy, I guess. And there's 3 different types of Chao. One is flying, one is curious / inebriated, and another is happy. And so they replaced the in-game ad with just a picture of something. And there's something about this that just feels like this is a game that they've added things to and removed things from, that the original purpose of a lot of stuff is lost. So this was originally reminding you of a website that you could go to download coloring pages. And now it's just a reminder that Chao exists. I might be reading this too closely, and I definitely am. But this is a microcosm of the bigger problems in these re-releases of Sonic Adventure, which is stuff is in the game that has lost its original utility and now is just there. And this poster, something about it, I don't like it. I don't know. What do you feel, Will?
You know, I think there's something to be said about like our generation growing up and some of the peripheral novelties of having these kind of like cross game, like weird interactive systems with one another that, you know, you could see it as like maybe a multimedia gimmick and maybe just like a way to sell more toys. But I don't know, there was some unconventional novelty about making these kind of extra textual details and adding this kind of further novelty to old video games, which is lost in the way consoles kind of update and these peripherals kind of work. Yeah, it's a bygone novelty. We're all just like, at most we can have some like interaction with our like smartphone or tie in with some game, maybe like not something like niche and hyper specific and novel like
Yeah, I think there is a lot about how these gardens are designed that is locked into the specifics of the consoles themselves. So obviously the VMU or the Game Boy Advance link cable. Here, for some reason, instead of reverting it back to the VMU, the Chao transporter now says Chao name machine because there's no transportation at all.
Right.
They couldn't even emulate the VMU for whatever reason, which I think would have been a pretty cool feature, frankly. All it does is rename your Chao, delete them, and that's it. Okay. So there's significant portions of what made the Chao Garden so interesting in terms of transporting the Chao between the game and the memory card or the game and another console in the case of the GameCube. And that is all lost, obviously, on the Steam version with no attempt to replicate it. And so this machine, I think they might as well just have removed it. But either way, it is still here and its original purpose is lost. Much like this poster and much like some of the other things in this game, there's just these weird remnants of different design choices over time. And if I may, if that video essay portion about the mall explained anything, I think malls are also that. Malls are this weird remnant of an original attempt at creating the third space, so to speak, in American society, and unsuccessfully or ineloquently doing that. And now malls are kind of in this weird nebulous place. The anchor stores are closing in record numbers. The purpose of a mall is kind of up for grabs, and the things that are in them don't do what they used to do. And I think we can read all of that into Sonic Adventure. So that is my whole take on the Sonic Adventure Station Square Chao Garden. It's weird in every form, but it goes from creepy to liminal dead mall vaporwave by the end.
Yeah. I feel like I'm a little biased as a co-host here, but I like how you've drawn this comparison charting like this evolution across like ports of Sonic Adventure to our real world. And this is like kind of a microcosm of how malls have turned into this facsimile and their utility and function has become a bit more uncertain over time. And yeah, now we have like the decline of Sonic Adventure's interactivity element. So it's interesting.
When the utility is gone, all we have are the aesthetics and the vibes. Well, that's as good a note to end on as any. So for Computer Lab Hijinks, I'm Nathan.
I'm Will.
Telling you to keep your files safe, keep your passwords managed, and for goodness sake, don't click on any strange links. And I forgot to say thanks for watching, but thank you for watching, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
In like the final level of Night's Journey into Dreams, there's that like vocal track that's like, in the nights, dreams of flight.
Oh, I do know that song.
You there again. And I just felt like this elation. Like people might find it corny, but I dug it. So
it's a good one.